So I'm sure at this point you've heard everyone and their mama talking about this SBMM change, specifically for the Black Ops 7 beta, what they're calling the open mosh pit. And to make sure I get the wording right, it says where skill consideration is drastically reduced when matchmaking. And I wanted to wait a little bit just to kind of see how different it was compared to the closed versus the open change that we've been asking for essentially since Modern Warfare 2019. One of the things that I know I'm going to see typed in the comments, even with the full explanation, is that people only want reduced SBMM because they want to stomp on bad players. This couldn't be further from the truth of what the actual problems are with the SBMM. So let's go ahead and get into it and how impactful I think this is going to be, because I think a lot of people are kind of wary that they're implementing this into the beta. Then they're making it two different options. You have with and without, that like good players will just lean towards the open and then bad players will just stay in the closed, so they stay with other bad players or whatever. But inevitably, I think what they're going to do is just implement this into the full game, because the backlash would be pretty extreme to do something like this and then kind of rug pull it essentially away from us. So I think they already had the intent of permanently putting it in the game. They just want to go ahead and give us a little bit of a tease, and then they end up taking the free W when they finally implement it. But maybe that's just being too optimistic. We cannot trust Activision as a company and what's going to motivate them, because we know that they're motivated by shareholders and making money. And that's about it. One of the things that I in particular like about it is there's a little bit more breathing room in the matches. When you play in a traditionally strict SBMM, which Call of Duty has had since Modern Warfare 2019, you feel like you are having to be locked in every match. A lot of these points about people snorting G Fuel or pounding energy drinks, taking caffeine pills, being on Adderall, a lot of that like really got pushed to the forefront of people talking about it, even if they're just memes, with the strictness in SBMM, because you really do have to feel like you're locked in. And for the purposes of the video, SBMM, even though it is different than engagement optimized matchmaking, let's go ahead and kind of just count them as the same. So every time I say the one, I kind of mean both. But that's kind of how it works. You have to lock in every second. You can't even blink because maybe you're going to get shot at an off angle. People do not miss, which creates a lot of issues, especially when it comes to keyboard and mouse, because they are in human-based input versus aim assist is very inhuman in a lot of ways, in my opinion. So you get that. There's a little bit less pressure to have to carry your own, to use the meta every single match, because you know at the end of the day, if you do not perform at the absolute peak performance, it is a guaranteed stomping, because all the other 6 players on the enemy team will 100% be performing at their peak as they head up into you, like they're competing for the world championship. The biggest benefit, in my opinion, is the variety of matches. And this is the part that we'll go ahead and talk about here. And let's go ahead and give you a quick example. So I'm going to go ahead and show you both of these on the screen. These are from 2 different matches. Go ahead and look at them really closely. Guess which one was open and guess which one is the SBMM that we've had for the past 6 years. You can go ahead and look really quickly. And it's actually a trick question. Both of these were in the same playlist. And the reason why that's important is because this is one of the biggest additions with the reduced SBMM, is you do get flexibility and variance of matches. The one where I performed worse was inherently against like a 3-stack and then some other good players in there. And then my team kind of sucked, which happens. There's a little bit of a randomness to it, but it's okay. It doesn't feel like I'm just getting abused every match by matchmaking, or it's being particularly manipulative, which matchmaking systems are kind of built that way to keep you on the game or whatever algorithms they're doing. And I think it benefits in the short term of the game. And that's why there's been some upticks on certain years, but the fall off is always pretty significant, because I think in the long-term sustained element of the game, it's pretty bad for the game. Regardless of that, you can also see that the other match, I also had a pretty phenomenal match, and I didn't have to do any lobby manipulation. I didn't have to VPN or 2-box or reverse boost or do any of these other shenanigans that people will inevitably try to do with strict SBMM to get themselves into the protected bracket. So this variance is very good in terms of your mental as well, because when you go into it, like I said, you don't have to lock in. You're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to go through a meat grinder. I'm not going to get burnt out on this game after a couple hours or a couple matches, which I saw in a lot of comments on that first day with SBMM as strict as it felt for a lot of players. The other part that gets kind of brushed off, these next few, is that you end up with lower ping on average. Obviously, there's going to be instances where maybe you're not, depending on your region or whatever, but you should on average have more consistent ping, better bullet registration, less packet burst, and a lot of these other nonsense things that aren't in your control. Obviously, some of these things can be in your control, like if you play on Wi-Fi versus playing directly hardwired. There's some variables that you have control. Maybe where you live, your internet could just suck. Maybe you're through a specific provider and another one would be better. But in general, if the system is better, you should have a lower ping overall. Obviously, if you play in a party, that would change that up a bit. And you kind of get to choose your experience and decide how you want to play and roll the dice every match. And that feels significantly different than what we have now, which feels very manipulative in nature, and it really controls what you're going to get. And you know, and everyone knows, even if joking on the previous videos, I put up my best, absolute best matches I had from my entire beta playtime, which included a nuke and a couple high kill games, but that was the absolute best. I didn't show all the other ones of the struggle, right? People don't generally like to watch the struggle. At least, you know, they don't, despite if they say they do. So either way, I don't include that part. But let's say I'm loading in a match, and if it's just like, ooh man, this is 6-man, I really don't want to participate in this, you can back out, queue up again, and roll the dice on the slot machine again in a different way for your lobby. Versus it being kind of like already predetermined what kind of lobby you're going to get into and what that outcome realistically will be. Because more often than not, it wants to kind of make it so that you win about half of your matches, you lose about half of your matches. So if you go on a win streak and you're doing quite well, they got to balance that out somehow. They're going to stack the deck against you. And that has been the long-term effect of SBMM, leading to burnout, especially since Modern Warfare 2019. There are arguments to be said that people have gotten better, true, and all these things, but it was a night and day shift, and there's a white paper specifically about this shift that happened in Modern Warfare 2019 that brought several other features that were great to COD, but plenty of others like this one that I think negatively impacted the long-term sustainability of COD as a whole, and that burnout has kind of caught up, and they're making that change. Competition is good for Call of Duty. Battlefield, I think, moved that needle. So with those positives, those are a lot of the main positives, right? The addition of this variance and all these other things is you can actually play with friends of varying skill levels. Basically from Modern Warfare 2019 through to now, you basically haven't been able to do that. If you are above average, even if just slightly above average, you know that when you play with your friends, they complain about how hard your lobbies are. This is a problem because one of the best parts of gaming is the social aspect of being able to play, jump on with your friends. They hit you up and saying, hey, when you're going to get on? And those types of elements, especially in multiplayer games, there's a sense of community, even within your own little community there. And that has been essentially been wiped out. With this change, I would imagine some of you guys are having a little bit better experiences playing with your spouse that maybe doesn't play that much, or your friend that kind of sucks, or your friend that's a god and you haven't really been able to play with them because that skill difference has kind of been punishing to you and you prefer to play with other people of lower skill. But at least now it's kind of randomness. It's not truly random. I think it's still a little bit of a bubble there, and it's not necessarily as loose as they're saying. And one little thing I did to kind of check this out to see how my lobbies were in the open bracket, they were like 1 KD averages, which is still not like truly open. Like back in the day when you would do like an open in World War II, IW, Black Ops 4, usually the lobby KD would be closer to the actual average. If you subtracted yourself with good stats, it would be like between 0.8 and 1. This is EKIA, so it kind of inflates it a little bit. But you can look up your ID, and then you can see I've looked up a bunch there. And I went through and I looked up different matches. Some people just had like Chinese characters. I couldn't look them up. Some names, for whatever reason, the thing doesn't like it. If your name has a 69 in it, it says it's profanity or some stupidity. But regardless, I went through and I tested different things and kind of saw what's what. This was at the time of that, and you can see that these lobbies, plenty of them, have higher KDs. This is in the open. So it's not like I'm being thrown in with the bots that a lot of people think. There is still going to be a protected bracket for these individuals. Sorry to flashbang you there. And this ends up being kind of what I was talking about with the skill thing. And I think some people are just visual. Prior to this change with SBMM, it'd be like this. And if I had some 10 bad matches in a row or something like that, it'd be dynamic. And then it'd give me a little bit of an easier lobby. Not quite that easy. I would have my ups and downs, but let's say I had a couple bad matches, then it would throw me into a little bit easier lobby, and then obviously I would perform well, and then it would shoot me back up. And that's like my little, oh, here, you've had a bad day. Let's give you an easier lobby so you don't just quit the game. And it's kind of very predictable what's going to happen, just the same way as if I have a very good match. Let's say right there, I know that the next match is going to be godlike and it's going to be a struggle and I cannot use off meta. If I'm trying to go for camos, I cannot use a pistol. I can't use some off rocket launcher, try to do melee. It's not going to happen in that lobby. So essentially, the protected bracket will still exist. As you can see there, I went through. You can look up the people in your lobbies and see kind of where they're at. Open lobby doesn't mean just pure bot lobby. It just means sometimes you'll get variants like the screenshot I showed you. In some instances, you're going to have a bunch of different matches that fall into this top category, which that means both teams are evenly matched. Both teams have a couple people that are kind of on the top end and they're going to go head to head, and a couple people that are on the bottom end. The match will be pretty competitive. People may or may not get streaks. That might be the determination on whether or not you're going to win or not. And then some instances, you're going to get these other lobbies where maybe it's a little bit more one-sided. You feel comfortable about getting the win the whole time. But if, they got a streak, it could turn the tide, and very much the opposite. And then there's going to be some other experiences where maybe it's just absolute disproportionate skill difference where you're going to be able to stomp that lobby, or like in the other case that I showed earlier, I could be fighting for my life. And in the instance of these, what ends up happening is as you play, instead of being locked to one specific bracket and knowing what you're going to get, instead of only eating cheese pizza every single day, a vanilla ice cream, or whatever the case is, you get a little bit of different flavor, a little bit different variety. It includes some of those experiences with your friends. So in some instances, you might start here and then automatically you go here, then you go up here and then back up here. And this could be regardless of performance. And then the people that need to be protected will be in the protected area, which I've had labeled there. This is a pretty oversimplification, but it is a good visual of kind of what's happening. And this is what it's going to feel like. Very random. So because of that volatility, that might be a bad thing for some people, but the net positive, I think overall is worth it, because in some instances I'll fight for my life, which is fine. In some it'll be competitive matches. Some I'll be on a team that's so one-sided, they're stomping my team. And then there's other times where I'll be able to go ahead and do the other part of it. There's also a benefit that you can actually express your skill level, because you will slowly get better. You'll see people in your lobby that are better than you, but you might be paired up with them and you can see them carrying the lobby, and that could be aspirational outside of just ranked play or whatever the case is. That's a huge part that's missing currently within Call of Duty. But I think the other part that will tie into this beautifully is the removal of disbanding lobbies. Tons of benefits to removing disbanding lobbies and keeping lobbies intact from lobby to lobby to lobby. I know Exclusive Ace has a full breakdown of this, I believe, and kind of explaining the nuance to it. It allows you to stay with whoever was in that match that you just finished. And let's say you guys are talking trash to each other. Let's just use that as a basic example. And you go, oh, let's see what you do in the next match. And then you guys actually fight it out again. Maybe you end up on the same team. Maybe you end up on opposing teams. Whatever the case is, and you can kind of battle it back and forth. Currently, the matches flip over so quick that basically by the time you've seen the scoreboard, their mics are already cut off. There's no talking. There's no yapping. And it feels like you're just going through the motions and you didn't really have that engagement. Some people keep their mic muted. That's me most of the time. But it's one of those things that I think it does add quite a bit of value to the experience to be able to run into other people. Maybe you like some of the people that you've played with. You can add them as your friends. And that's going to happen over multiple matches. Being in one match and then you just get thrown into another lobby still happened in previous Call of Duties, but it would happen once the connection disparity got kind of too wide because the lobby persisted, right, between the different players. So I think that's something they got to work on. Again, this is not about trying to just pub stomp people, even though that will sometimes happen. It'll still be few and far between, and it'll still be significantly rarer than what you can accomplish right now with the simple 2-box and getting into that protected lobby. I think it is a huge step. It's no small thing that they're actually doing here, essentially admitting that the system that they've had for 5 years is probably not as good as the system they've decided to go with since 2019. I am still cautiously optimistic. I don't know how they're going to implement this in the full game. I would love to know that, hey, we just made everything open and that type of thing. I don't think the game will launch with 2 different modes of open and closed and all this other stuff. I don't think there's enough space to really have that number of modes. And it'll create its own subset of issues. So I think everything will just go back to the way it was. If you need to be protected, you will be protected. If you want to pub stomp, you can. If you want to go competitive matches, you will have that full variance of matches to go ahead and play and not feel like you're playing the exact same match back to back to back to back. You're literally rolling the dice and not feeling like you're being manipulated just because you bought a bundle or didn't buy a bundle or went on a streak or had a bad game or whatever. So let me know your kind of thoughts of it. I'm still cautiously optimistic, like I said. I'm sure tons of people will have sound discussion in the comments. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.